Today, we're just going to have a candid conversation about a topic that I felt like came to us this morning as just like something to be interesting to talk about. And it's about knowing what season you're in. And this is actually a skill set. I feel like it's
Mhm.
a gift that you can develop of knowing the season you're in. Because how many of you know if you do the right action in the wrong season, it
Mm.
won't produce the result you were looking for, right?
Mhm.
If it's winter, and you're trying to plant some things that are more things you're supposed to plant in the summer,
Mhm.
like they're not going to grow and they're not going to get the result, even though the seed is the same, even though the intention is the same, even though the work you put in is the same.
Mhm.
Doing the right action in the wrong season produces the wrong. It doesn't produce the result that you're looking for. And so this is something I feel like we have developed over the
Mhm.
years sensitivity to. And we just wanted to, I guess, have a conversation about that. So, yeah, I feel like maybe we start with talking about this season and what we're sensing in this season specifically. And then we can talk about, how to develop a sensitivity for seasons.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think I'll go first with just being vulnerable. And we've shared a little bit about this. And we moved a couple of weeks ago, and it's probably been about a 5, 6 month journey of leading up to this big move. And I would say about 3 to 4 months of that season. I feel like it feels like a long time, but it also feels like yesterday. So the months are
Yeah.
kind of getting blended together. But I would say for me, I have been in a very intense transition season with this big move. And,
Hmm.
really felt like God was calling us to another invitation of like, do you trust me? And we really felt like we were supposed to move. And so we just kept putting one foot in front of the other, as you do with any faith journey, whether you are actually moving your family, you're starting a new business. Those are all steps of faith. And for me, like I am leaving behind very much comfort and what I've known my entire life into a place that I'm very excited to be, feel like we're supposed to be, but also like missing parts of our life that were so comforting to me. And, we lived in a small town that I grew up in my entire life. I moved away for a couple of months during the summer, and that's the extent. And we've done a lot of traveling. I'm so grateful for, but this small town very much feels like stability, comfort, like everything I've known. And the more and more that I share about this big move, I know that there are so many of you listening, or maybe you're going to eventually go through a big life transition. And I've just been encouraged by so many of you who like, I understand where you're at. Give yourself so much grace. And so that's why I feel like compelled to talk about this, knowing the season, because
Yeah.
maybe you've gone through this and you can just be an encouragement to a friend, or maybe you will go through this and you can use this podcast as a reference point. And so I've learned in this season that my capacity has not gone down, but I've just really had to protect the things that I'm doing versus the things that I shouldn't be doing. And we can go into that in a little bit more, but I've learned in this process, like I knew that it would be parts of it would be challenging and sad. And there were a lot of moments even before we like left our town that I was like grieving and letting go, but also being like ready for the next. But I have learned about my personality, and we did a podcast not too long ago about the DISC communication tool that we go through with all of our team members. And in that, like I'm a high S, and S really loves like stability and a game plan and
Yeah.
routine. And the last 3 to 4 months, there hasn't been a lot of that in my life. I mean, there has and there hasn't. And just like the mental load of knowing that change is coming has been pretty unsettling for me. And so I just know that I am in a season where like I should not probably be like launching a brand new program. I probably shouldn't like, there's just things that
Yeah.
I need to like protect my heart and protect my time with. Like I've been a little bit more like silent on social media because I'm just trying to like work through a lot of the grieving and embracing the new. And I'm also a very deep feeler. So like I will feel things like
Mm.
strongly and have to process and work through that. And so If you have reached out to me or us in this transition, like, thank you, because it's been so comforting to have others who have gone through this before. And I think for me in this season, I've leaned very heavily into friendships that we've built in business or mentors that have gone through transitions before. Because for me, this is like one of the first, like, I would say monumental transitions. I mean, we've gone through transitions before, we've gone through hard things in business before, but like this was like a very like deep one for me. And when you go through this, especially as a deep feeler, somebody who wants stability and doesn't want to be overwhelmed, it can feel like it's almost never ending, or like, am I going to finally come out of the tunnel of feeling like I'm not completely settled yet? And I think what has been so comforting for me is to have multiple people being like, you're going to get through this. It's
Hmm.
going to be good. And having that be my focus in this time. And I shared this on a podcast that one of the things that's been helping me in this time is I really feel like God gave me a picture for our family of us being on the beach, having fun, and like the fresh breeze blowing in my hair, and there just being like peace that surpasses all understanding. And that's what I've had to go through before we moved here to like get myself into a place of like, it's going to be good. Like, you're going to get to that side, holding on to that promise and that picture that God gave me. And then even being here, like, I've been intentional about taking the boys to the beach
Yeah.
because it's been this like calming, not only, I think scientifically, the beach and the ocean, it's so healing for your body, but just like that picture too, just getting myself to that place of like right now in this season, like my health of like processing this well and showing up powerfully in the business where I'm supposed to be putting my energy and time, and then also our marriage and the boys, like, and beyond that, like, don't try and do a million things. Like, the house will get organized. You will have furniture for that room. You will have a nightstand one day, because
Yeah.
right now we don't have those. And just like being like, it's okay. It's okay.
Mm.
So that's where I've been in the last couple of months, leading up to this like transition. And I've very much known like I am in this transition season. And at times it's felt overwhelming and like, is it going to end? And other times it's like, it's going to be okay. So I'm very much in a day to day surrender, put worship music on, find my place of peace, connect with friends who have got us in our corner. And that's what it's been for me.
Yeah. And the skill set we talked about of sensing seasons, right?
Mhm.
You might be resonating with the season that we're walking through, but even pulling back a
Mm,
little bit higher level and looking at like culture
mm,
and the nations and like the
mm,
world, right? Like if you kind of like just pull back and just like imagine yourself kind of just flying over everything and looking down and looking for like patterns and trends, that is a powerful skill set to learn, because how you act in those seasons can really determine your future. And we quote
mm,
this verse all the time. It says, those who watch the winds and the clouds will never sow, or it means they're not going
mm,
to plant, right? And they're not going to harvest, right? Those who are caught up with kind of watching the
mm,
weather, right, are not going to sow, and so they're not going to harvest.
mm,
And we learn this in seasons where there's a lot more like kind of distraction and things going on. Those are the times to really invest,
mm,
to really plant, to really go deep on the things that really matter in that season for you. So if it's building wealth for your family, if it's building relationship, if it's building, more time into, your kids, your family, your marriage, right? The thing that feels like almost like harder to do in this season, is the thing that you should do, because it'll be more effective because you're
mm,
planting it in a season, where there's going to be a great harvest, right? And
mm,
so if we kind of like look out at the season right now, as the time we're recording this podcast, there's definitely, I would say, what I would call a global, just like slight global discontentment. Now, some
mm,
people have this at a really high level, like just really kind of sick of something, right? Like
mhm,
this way something's been done. And when you see this kind of starting to happen nationally or globally, it is typically what I believe leads to kind of like a new era, like the kind of unfolding. Like everyone's kind of just like ready for something different and new. And like the thing that had worked for a long time is no longer really working, right? And there's just a kind of a discontentment there. That is often an invitation for the pioneers who lead people into a new era, right? And these are the people that kind of can see vision beyond the stuff. Like Chelsey talked about the squeeze, like people right now are freaking out about the squeeze and oh my goodness, and the facts, right? But the people that have vision for beyond that, those are the people that usually rise up as visionaries, pioneers, and the ones who really lay the foundation for what that next era has available, right? So it's the builders and it's the pioneers, it's the visionaries that really lead new eras. And then people kind of like catch up when they first start talking about it, first start seeing it. People think they're crazy. And then, as the discontentment gets high enough in other people, the people that are the visionaries, the builders, they're not discontent because they're like, I know the solution. I see it. And eventually other people will start to come on to that vision. And then it becomes like you enter that new era. And so there's a lot of opportunity in this season because of that kind of discontentment. There's a lot of opportunity to solve problems. So if you're a problem solver, you will be rewarded heavily in this season because there's just people are discontent with the problems in their life. And if you are a solutionary to bring, positive change or solutions to those problems, whether it's selling products that solve those problems, whether it's, helping people in a service that solves those problems, whether it's, creating information products that solve that problem, like you get to be a voice, a pioneer to help people shift in this season when people are really looking for a shift. And the other word I wrote down was like, one of our mentors calls us the nest. He says like the nest is getting prickly. And so if you're sensing this, like this is like a seasonal thing, you're not alone in it. The nest is kind of like where you are comfortable and it starts to get a little bit more prickly when it's time to leave the nest, right? When it's time to jump out, but jumping out is scary because now you got to learn to fly, but it's for your betterment. It's like for your betterment to leave the nest. And so you may be sensing this like we did, whereas like things that were comfortable, like you could totally stay there, but they are just getting a little bit more prickly and it's time to kind of take that next step of faith and knowing that it's going to be an upgrade. It's going to be something that you're going to fly. You're going to be new territory there. And we also we're talking about the squeeze season. I talked about this on my Instagram and just a lot of people resonated with it. And the squeeze season is really where it's really tempting to look at the walls that are kind of almost feeling like they're coming in around you, whether it's financially, relationally, with the economy, like whatever you want to call it. There's just extra pressure in this season. And we talked about this in a past episode, like the trick for this is to continue looking forward, right? It's the visionary that sees the expansion that's beyond the tunnel, right? The tunnel is not actually ending in a dead end or not going to squeeze you out. But if you keep going, there's expansion for you into something even greater, even bigger. And so those are definitely like what I'm sensing in this season right now. If you live in America, we're going into a political season as well, right? Like, so when this episode comes out, we'll probably be in the thick of it. But during political seasons, we typically see a little bit more fear news cycle happening, right? Like a lot of more news around fear, a lot more kind of division in the air, people just choosing sides, drawing lines. And I totally get like there's passion there. But oftentimes in political seasons, people can feel a little bit out of control. And so they tend to grasp for things that they can control. So sometimes they bring the division and the drama into environments that they feel like they can control. But really that's just that's just them being reactive to what's in the air. And when I say in the air, I mean, just like, it's kind of like in the culture, right now. We had an episode, if you want to go listen to a gem, it's called the 3-word strategy or something like that. 3-word flip the root strategy. We did this a while back and we've actually done it a couple times on this podcast. But really the secret to all of this is when you can sense the season, how you rise above it and not be a reactive person, but be a productive person, right? Someone who's not watching the wind and the waves and not planting is you find out what is the root thing. Like what is, maybe it's division, right? Maybe it's control. And it's usually, sometimes it's a negative thing, right? Maybe it's, scarcity's in the air. Like 2020, we talk about this story all the time. Scarcity was in the air. Like people are like trying to, steal hand sanitizer from like the register because it was all sold out. and toilet paper, and everyone's just hoarding scarcity,
Yeah.
right? So whenever there's something like that in the air with a culture, or like, in the broad public, how you rise above that is you come against it intentionally in an opposite but greater spirit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or we could call it even like an attitude, okay, or an action. And so
Mm-hmm.
when there was scarcity in the air, how we broke that off of our family and decided we weren't going to be under it, we were going to be over it, was we started giving away toilet paper. So we like bought bulk toilet paper online, we started giving it away. And that just broke that thing off of our family, where we no longer were saying like, oh, we're just going to react to like how everyone
Yeah.
else is doing. So if you are a pioneer, you're going to be a builder in this next season, this next new era. You have to be someone who is a creator. Like, you're creating, you're not reacting. And so I used to have this post-it note on my desk that said like, am I creating culture or reacting to culture? Right?
Mm.
Are you creating culture in your family or reacting to culture in your family? Are you creating culture in your town or reacting to culture in your town? Right? Like, are you just being thrown around by the wind and the waves of life? And the last Facebook post you saw is determining how your day goes, or are you creating culture? And so to create culture, it requires an awareness of kind of this higher level, what's going on, and then choosing intentionally to break that thing if it's trying to get you under it, right? If division is trying to get you under it, you saw a post on Facebook, someone just wrote the most nasty political thing ever, and you just were ready, just typing out that comment. Oh, and maybe you didn't leave the comment, right? But
Or maybe you did.
Maybe you did. Okay, maybe you did. But you know how it is. Like, someone posts something, you're like, how could they? Oh, wow. And that justice thing in you, that's good.
Yeah.
It's a good thing in you. You're passionate. But that thing, like that person, right? You had that engagement on Facebook. There's like a spirit on it of disconnection, of disunity. And it's your strength, which is justice and like passion, but it's twisted, right? You get it twisted. And then now that thing is kind of on you a little bit. You're driving to work and someone cuts you off, and you have like a even more reaction than you would have normally, because like you're just kind of thinking about that thing and it's just kind of on you. That thing is just grabbed onto you, right? That division thing. And then you show up at that extended family dinner, and like there's something that family member does that kind of, it just thing rubs me the wrong way. And now all of a sudden, and like you're under that thing now. You are being reactive to the thing that you caught on Facebook and you agreed to. Right? This is all about your mindset and what you agree to and what you allow in your life. Like, you have authority over your life, and what you agree to, you're giving it permission to like reign over your life. And so you want these things. Do you want them to be over you? No. If you sense one of the things coming at you, you want to come against it in opposite greater. Okay. So, hey, maybe that person that posts on Facebook, again, you can't be doing this with every single person, but maybe you do something that's not for them. It's for you. And you send them a message on Facebook and you say, hey, you send like money on Facebook. Hey, I just want to buy you a coffee today. Here's $5. Like, I just want to buy you a coffee. No reason, and just boom. Now that thing didn't attach onto you, right? It's not about an agenda. It's not about changing their mind. You did that for you because you're saying, I'm not going to come underneath this thing. I'm going to be over this thing, and I'm not inviting that into my life today. Then you're driving to work and someone cuts you off and you're like, hey, that person must be in a hurry, right? And you're at the family thing. You're like, you know what? I see the way I see how they think that way because they had this hard childhood, right? Like you're seeing life differently because you're not coming in agreement with something that's just like in the air. Okay. And this is the difference between, I would say people that are just floundering around in life and being thrown around, and people that are strong and know who they are and are going to rule their life,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm seeing this season. It's the prickliness, it's a squeeze season. There's a global discontentment. Those are more the negative things, but the positive side of it is like, there is a new era coming. There's going to be leaders of that new era that are visionaries, pioneers, and builders. There's an opportunity to fly where you don't have to stay somewhere where it's going to get pricklier and pricklier. It does require a step of faith. And there is expansion. And we're even starting to like kind of just mentally say, like, we're through it. We're like not in the prickliness. We're through the squeeze. Like, we're in the expansion, and we're starting to own that now and starting to see it. And so, if you need someone who's going to be that encouraging voice because you're in the middle of it, just listen to our stuff. Grab onto our Instagram, get on our podcast. Like we always will be hope dealers for you. But I hope this is encouraging you guys, like kind of just talking about the season. So that's at least what I'm seeing. What are you seeing, Chelsea,
Yeah,
in
I
this
think a
season?
couple of things.
And then we'll talk about at the end, how do you start identifying these
Yeah,
things?
I think Stephen and I are a great balance because I am the deep feeler, and I don't sometimes get over things as quickly as I should, and that's on me. Like I'm learning to not be offendable, to not get offended. And Stephen is much quicker, and I'm so grateful because he's eating my peach right here on the show.
Is this offending you?
No, it's not offending
It
me.
was the last piece, so it was like,
oh, and now seeing you eat it, I just want a
well,
juicy
you know what?
peach.
There's abundance of
There's
peaches in the
more.
kitchen.
Yeah, see, you guys see
Oh my
this.
gosh.
So
I'll
Stephen
get you 2
has like
peaches.
such a gift of like seeing this, and like I'm so grateful. And this is like one of the things when we were newly married that like drove me crazy. It was just like, you know, you just say things so like, why aren't you realistic? You know, and I would poke at that, like, you're not realistic. But like he is realistic, and he does like have these healthy like mindsets. No, neither one of us is perfect. We have flaws. We do, you know, things that aren't great all the time. You know, not all the time, but you know what I'm saying, you guys. We're not perfect humans.
I'm perfect. So
Okay.
I was just kidding.
But I think like we've learned to balance each other because like I just want to give an example. Like when I was pregnant with Ollie, and I'm getting somewhere, you guys. Like when I was pregnant with Ollie, I was super sick, and I just was in this like, again, very winter hard season, kind of similar to I feel like what I'm going through now and have been in. And like you and I just had to have like, you had to have mentors almost say like Stephen, like you need to be in Chelsea's pain with her. Like you don't have to live there, and you don't have to spiral like I would sometimes spiral, but you need to like be empathetic. And so I just want to acknowledge that Stephen is like, you're very empathetic, and you can like lean into people's pain, but like you have this beautiful thing of like this like hope and joy that like the world honestly needs. Like we need all of that. Like you can stand in that. So anyway, I guess I'm just wanting to acknowledge that. But I think for me, like in this intense season, like that's all I know how to call it. Is like there are things bubbling to the surface that I need to work through. And sometimes those things that you realize that you need to work through are a lie that you believe about yourself, or a past trauma that you shove to the side, or oftentimes it's childhood wounds that you don't even realize are there. Like that's really the root of things. I think that's why so many people get held back in business. So many people get held back in like just their belief cycle that they might even adopted without even realizing it is rooted in their childhood. And so that's why Stephen and I are big about doing the internal work. And there's always new levels of the internal work that you can do. And so I am very much in doing this deep internal work that is not fun, that is not comfortable, but things are coming to the surface that I like knew kind of was there, that I thought I dealt with, but I really haven't dealt with. And so even though it's really painful, these things coming to the surface oftentimes do not come to the surface unless you're in an season of intensity. And I just want to like normalize that those seasons do happen in business. Like there are hard seasons. There are problems that, yes, you can solve, but it feels like this big mountain. But like shifting it to like, I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to have tools and resources. And for me, it's like, even though this sucks, and like I had a counseling appointment yesterday that I cried the majority of the time through, like I am grateful that I am getting tools and resources to help me get more free and get more whole and get more healthy. Because I can guarantee you sometime in mine and Stephen's life of being parents, of being business owners, like there's going to be other hard times. There's going to be times where the boys do something that is so frustrating or that is so hurtful that like I'm in this like spiral again, you know? And so all that to say is like life happens, business happens. And how can you use the opportunity? I'm choosing to use this time as like, wow, I'm so grateful that I like found an awesome counselor, because I feel like been praying for that for a long time. And I found somebody that doesn't know me, that doesn't know my family, that I'm starting fresh. Like, how cool is that? How cool is that she's giving me hope? How cool is that the last 5 to 10 years of being in business, we've built amazing relationships with people who love us, that have been texting us weekly, checking on us, seeing how my heart is doing. Like we didn't have that before. Like how cool is that? how cool is it that I feel so safe to just like cry at the drop of a pin in front of friends and family and strangers alike, like that's
Yeah.
where I'm at. And I get to become healthier and a better version, not just for our marriage and our business, but for our boys, which to me is like the ultimate. Like, I want to be the healthiest, best version for them so that they don't have to deal with maybe some of the insecurities and the traumas that I've never dealt with. And so while it's hard, and I don't wish it on anybody, I can look back on every single season in my life that has been really, really hard that I just want to press fast forward through and be like, wow, I learned this lesson that I would have never been able to learn unless I had gone through this. And it doesn't mean that it's easy or that it's fun or that like I want to do it again, but it's necessary. So I just like, that's another side of it too that I think is very important. And there's something
I
else
have a
I was going to
question for you.
say. Yes. What's your question?
Okay, so I've noticed that using the word intense,
Yeah.
and I was kind of reminded how
Hmm.
in pregnancy you use that. You've shifted your language
Yeah.
from pain to intensity. So I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if there's a correlation there in this. I don't know, it's just an interesting choice of words.
Yeah, I think intensity, why I'm using it is because I don't know how to describe, I don't have another word. So there's
Well, I
that.
think it's a good word.
Yeah, I think it's a good.
Why did you shift? I'm asking questions to kind of dig it out
Yes.
here. In pregnancy,
Yeah.
when you're having a baby, you went with a birth coach, right?
Yes.
And the birth coach was saying, don't use the word pain,
Yes.
use the word intensity.
Yeah. I think this is true for now too, is because pain is associated with something that is wrong. Like your body will signal you in pain to know like, oh, I cut myself. I chopped off my finger. That's pain. We should do something about that pain versus like intensity, at least in birth. And I think now just symbolizes this is normal. You have to go through the intensity to get the baby, to get the beautiful reward. And so for me, pain, saying, if I chose on my birth plan, please don't ask me my pain level. Please ask me my intensity level if they wanted to. Because pain was like, I imagine these like lights going off in my head, like, something's wrong, calling the doctor, like you need emergency surgery. When in the reality, the pain that you go through childbirth and the intensity of it is necessary to get this beautiful baby that I wouldn't trade for the world. And so I think that's the same thing in this is like, it's super intense. I wish it would be not intense, but it is. And that's what builds you and that's what get you through it. And that's what brings to the surface. It's like an invitation to really sift through and sort through maybe some of the things that you glazed over that you were unaware of when you were in this other season. And I think that's another thing, that there's always seasons. We talked about in the beginning, knowing what season you're in and knowing that seasons come to an end too. So, and I can, transparently right now, I'm like, this season is going on long enough. But so there's like that, there can be that weariness to things. And I have felt weary in the last couple of weeks on certain things of like, it's just intense, and I felt that way in pregnant, like when I was in like birthing our boys, like there are times where it was weary and it was like, is this ever ending? Am I going to be in labor for another 48 hours,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But even that language is really powerful. You're choosing a victorious language of intensity that's like, I'm going to go through this instead of pain, which is more of a victim, language, which is like, I'm going to turn around. I need to stop. Like something's wrong. Right. And so I think even just that choice of language is really powerful. And we've talked about this a lot on this show, just like be aware of your language, right? Because your language, when you actually dig into it, will kind of reveal some of the underlying things, And so that leads us to kind of this last little bit here. Let's talk about, how do you identify seasons? How do you sense them? And kind of know what season you're in. And so I don't have like a, 3-point, strategy on how to do this. I do think it is a gift. I think it's a gift that you can ask for from God, and he will give you, it's like a spiritual gift that he will give you freely. So you want to ask for it because it's a very powerful thing. I think getting around other people that see this way is really powerful because it'll kind of train you. And you're probably like hearing what I was saying, what Chelsea was saying. You're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of
Mm,
sense. Oh yeah, I have been feeling that. So you have been seeing it, but sometimes just identifying it is really powerful. So I'd say the two things that I am looking for is like patterns. I'm always looking for patterns because like it's not just like a one-off thing. It's like, oh wow, I've had multiple conversations with
mm,
entrepreneurs
yeah.
that are going through this and this and this and this. And I'm just like seeing it over and over and over again. Right. And then and once I see a pattern, then I'm asking what's underneath it. Right. Cause like the thing that could be happening could be more surface level. It's like a manifestation of the root, right? It's like the fruit. It's like the tree. You're seeing the tree,
Mm,
which is like, oh, drama or, oh, employee stuff or, oh, like, financial squeezing, right? Like that's like all like kind of the surface level thing. But what's the root? What's the underneath thing? It's like kind of like
mm,
it's what's this, what, if you go under the surface, what's the seed, that created that thing? And so that's kind of what I'm asking when I'm seeing something
mm,
uh, that's a pattern that's happening across a lot of people, culture, a town, a business, right? I'm always kind of going down like, what's the root? What's underneath this thing? And I just kind of take a second to try to like, look underneath
mhm,
it. And oftentimes you can kind of get to the root, right? Where it's like, oh, this is about control, or like this is about, you know, um, abundance. Like it could be positive, it could be negative, right?
mhm,
But oftentimes when you ask that question, like you will start digging into something. And sometimes you have to start asking questions to people when you're seeing these patterns, asking questions to people in your life to get to the root. But oftentimes you can sense it. And then
mm,
once you get the root, you kind of just start applying like that. Okay, maybe it's this root. You start applying that to these different situations. If it's like yes, 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 yes. If it's applying to all of them when you start digging into it with people, then you're like, okay, I've gotten to it. And then once you know the root, you can flip the root, right? Which is that 3-word strategy we talked about. So, I don't know. That's like me doing my best job explaining how I get there. Um, what
I
do you
think
think?
another one about knowing the season is not feeling guilty or bad if you're in a hard season or if you're in a good season. Like, before we decided to move, I felt like I was in this really sweet spot with the boys. They were playing and interacting. I had my schedule dialed. I knew what I was doing. It was just like this really beautiful spring blossoming, relationships were blossoming, time with the boys was blossoming. It was just I was really grateful for it. But at the same time, like there are people in business that weren't having a great time. And it was okay. I needed to be
Mm,
okay that things in our life were blossoming when other people's, they were having maybe more turmoil or hardship in one area that we weren't, and you can still come alongside
mm,
and be there for them and be that good friend, be the strategist while also not feeling guilty that you are in a different season. And simultaneously right now, like I've been in, like I said, an intense season where I'm not trying to fill my plate with a million things and launch, like I don't have all these brain dumps of business idea and super motivated to do this. Like I just don't. I know what my capacity is and I'm hitting it. And any free time is going to be spent with our family and with the boys and really like diving deep into like where we're living now and putting down roots.
mm,
And but the thing is like I have girlfriends that are crushing it in business right now that are like wanting to ramp up and wanting to like go crush the goals and have the business meeting and set all these huge crazy, not crazy but just like big goals, and they are
mhm,
in this like explosive growth. Like one of my friends like hit the Inc. 5,000 list for the second year in a row. Their business is booming. She's just like, I'm in this sweet spot. We're doing this. And I'm in a place of like, I don't want to add more to my plate. I don't see her goals and say like, now I need to add those to mine so that
mhm,
I can be her. But I'm able to say like, that's awesome for you. And I celebrate you, but I am in a different place where like, I'm more intentionally focused on our boys and getting rooted here than I am on other things that she might be more
mm.
investing in. And just knowing that that is okay.
Yeah,
So I think there's a
100%.
huge piece of
Like
that.
if you
And
were trying to
yeah.
plant like the right thing, which is all these goals, all these things
Yeah.
in this season that we're in, it would not produce fruit, right? It
No,
would not
yeah.
produce fruit if we're like, let's go do all this stuff, right? So,
Mm.
yeah.
We're being selective about things, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's important.
Okay. All right, you guys. That's our candid conversation around seasons
Yes.
and knowing the season you're in. So take a second before you just jump over to the next podcast or whatever the thing you're
Mm.
doing next in your life and just ask, what season am I in? Close your
Mm.
eyes.
What do I need to be focusing on right now? Where's my time, my energy?
Yeah.
What are those things that will really move the needle for my business,
Yeah.
for my family, for you? This isn't about
Yeah.
what
It doesn't have to
somebody
be
else is
business
doing.
or
Yeah.
family. It could be like, or it doesn't have to be business and family. It could be, maybe it's just family, maybe it's just business. Like, what is it for you? What is the high ROI seed that you're supposed to be planting in this season?
Mm-hmm.
And is there anything that you're coming under in this season? Second question. That is like, man, this thing's been really trying to like get a hold of me, like this scarcity or this squeeze or this,
Shame that I'm
yeah,
not
like
doing
what is that
enough.
thing
Yeah.
that's like, maybe it's, you just let it in and you're starting to see stuff come under it and starting to act in ways like in reaction to that thing. If you don't want that anymore, just say, I say no to blank, whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
I just replace it with blank, right? And that other thing that you're replacing with is positive, it's opposite, but it's greater. Like the opposite version of the thing, but it's greater. It's like light is always greater than darkness, right? So replace it with that thing. And then the third question you can ask yourself is, what is one, small but powerful way I can act in that greater opposite thing, right? So maybe there's a strategy that comes to you right now that you're like, ooh, I'm going to do that thing, right? I'm going to act in that way. That's like in that positive spirit. And that's going to just break that thing off of you. You already said no to it. You already replaced it, but acting on it is going to really activate it in your life.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
We get asked all the time, what are your favorite books? So we put together a quick free download of the top 15 most influential books that helped us grow a 7-figure business by age 30.
The cool part about this list is they're actually sequential, from the ones we read at the very beginning to the ones that are impacting our lives right now. With the list, we also have the hookup for audible.com, where you usually listen to the books on a walk or while doing the dishes. This is my favorite way to consume books. If you want the list, go to rainmakerfamily.com/deals. We also have a link to Audible there so you can listen to the books on the go. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/deals.